President Trump, refusing to take no for an answer, is demanding that his Department of Justice find a way to circumvent the Supreme Court and get a citizenship question on the 2020 census. Early this morning, the president tweeted, "The news reports about the Department of Commerce dropping its quest to put the citizenship question on the census is incorrect, or, to state it differently, fake. We are absolutely moving forward as we must because of the importance of the answer to this question." Well, his tweet directly contradicted his Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, who said this in a statement yesterday. The Census Bureau has started the process of printing the decennial questionnaires without the question. Well, the president's tweet plunged his Department of Justice into chaos. An assistant attorney general told the judge today, quote, "We at the Department of Justice have been instructed to examine whether there is a path forward." Another lawyer for the Justice Department explained, quote, "The tweet this morning was the first I had heard of the president's position. I do not have a deeper understanding of what that means. I can tell you that I have confirmed that the Census Bureau is continuing the process of printing the questionnaire without a citizenship question." Well, last week, the Supreme Court rejected the administration's stated reason for adding the question, calling it contrived. The administration had argued that the citizenship question was necessary to protect voters and enforce parts of the Voting Rights Act. More, I'm joined by Aaron Blake, Washington Post senior political reporter, and Kim Whaley, law professor and author of the new book, How to Read the Constitution and Why. That's a timely book. Let me go to Aaron first. Okay. Is it going to be in the census question for 2020, the citizenship question?
As of right now, the government is moving forward and they are printing the census without this question. They seem to think that they can do that right now and still pursue some kind of a court case. If you look at what the Supreme Court ruled last week, it was not, there are under no circumstances that you can actually do this. It was the justification that you provided was contrived. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't the actual reason. Basically, you fabricated this entire thing. But John Roberts, the Chief Justice who wrote this decision, allowed for them to potentially come back through the court system and make another case, offer another justification. The question from there is, do they have enough time? Because this needs to start being printed. It's due by April of 2020. And also, are they going to be able to come up with an actual valid justification that doesn't completely fly in the face of what they just told these judges? And apparently the Justice Department decided this was not possible. They didn't have enough time. And they actually told this judge on Tuesday that they were done. And then the president tweeted on Wednesday. He said that this was not a settled issue. He wanted people to look for ways to make this happen. And that put these lawyers in the position of basically going back to this judge and offering a mea culpa, saying, we are going to try something. We don't know what it is. I don't even know what the president's talking about, but we're still in this game right now. So they're doing two things at the same time. They're printing the existing format of the questionnaire, which does not include a question about citizenship. Meanwhile, they're fighting the court case of some hope that they can get it overturned. Why do they do this? Why do they want the citizenship question in there politically? What's the reason? Well, politically, it looks like from the record that they want to basically make it hard for non-citizens to actually answer the question and then be counted for the census, because the census numbers are used for purposes of reapportioning
so they want to
congressional
scare
districts.
People who have family members who aren't documented into not participating and therefore not building up the population of those areas where they live. Correct. And the census itself is about counting heads. It's not about counting citizens. I don't think everyone understands that. So it's not like that's impossible. Can you have a congressional seat that represents 600,000 people not legally in the country? Under the enumeration clause, it's about actually counting people, not counting citizens. They can all be visitors. But it doesn't forbid the government from getting additional information on the census form. That's the issue. Do you think the average Trumpite understands this kind of complicated push? No, I don't. I actually teach this kind of law, agency administrative law. It's very, very complicated. Very few people understand. Who's going to vote for Trump who would normally vote for Trump because he's making you put citizenship questions, answering a citizenship question on your census? I think very few. But if we get it, if this continues down this road where it could go, that is, the President of the United States flouting a Supreme Court decision. The judge in this hearing said, what do you want me to do? Issue an injunction telling the president to stop tweeting in a manner that's inconsistent? I thought they had to come up with a better argument. Isn't that still the case? Is that still the case? Yeah, that's basically what they have to do, but they have to make that argument. Can they be honest and say we're doing this for political reasons? Well, that was the theory. Reduce the power of progressive minority voters? Right. Can they say that? That was actually a theory after these decisions.
decisions last week, because not only did that decision come down that day, but the partisan gerrymandering case came forward, and basically the court gave states the authority to do partisan gerrymandering. So why couldn't the Justice Department come forward and say, yeah, we did this because we wanted to help Republicans? That it's not completely inconceivable.
You're laughing, you mean it?
No, there are legal experts who thought that was a potential argument that they could make. The problem for the Trump administration right now is whatever justification they offer, they have to square with what they said before. If they come forward and offer a completely different justification, they're basically admitting that what they said before was total nonsense. It wasn't actually their justification, and that's a tough argument.
You know what this reminds me of? The Muslim ban. The first time they said no Muslims of anybody of that background and that religion can come in the country, they said, no, we better fix that. Now we'll just have countries that have what active terrorist watch is going on.
But John Roberts left it. He said that the Secretary of Commerce has broad authority to put questions on the census. They just basically have to offer an actual justification. I think it was actually a pretty broad door that he left open for this question, but we didn't know if there was going to be enough time for them. We didn't know if they could actually come forward with an actual justification.
Is this a part of the Republican Party recognizing they're becoming a smaller group of older white people, basically, recognize that that's the reality, so they have to cheat? They have to cheat through gerrymandering. They have to cheat through suppression efforts like plastic, ID cards. You have to come with an ID card. Getting old people who live in row houses to go somewhere, a Department of Transportation building to get an ID card. All this is just to reduce the minority vote.
Well, that's the argument. I'm not a political analyst, but I think that is certainly what the record was developed in this particular case suggested. And actually, this, as a matter of law, is kind of an out-of-the-box decision by Justice Roberts. The court held that the stated rationale under the statute was actually okay. They can give whatever rationale they want as long as it's legitimate.
Yeah.
The problem here was that the court said there was bad faith here in actually reaching out and manufacturing this Voting Rights Act. And the fact that
do you agree with Aaron? It's possible that this court, 5-4 Republican court, would say, yeah, it's good Republican partisanship. Go ahead.
I think not in this case, on this record. I think it would have to be in 10 years, frankly. Otherwise, they're really undermining the rule of law.
So how's it look right now? We're going to have a census next year, to 2020, that doesn't have the question in it. That looks like where it's headed.
There's basically no way in which they can delay this. The real deadline here, according to legal experts, is October 31st. This is being printed right now. Ostensibly, they could print it and then reprint, throw it all away, waste the money, and reprint it. But October 31st is the real deadline where they really have to have a resolution on this.
Thank you so much, Aaron Blake. Thank you, Kim Wiley, for coming in. And what's the name of your book again?
How to Read the Constitution and Why.
I'm big on civics. We need this to learn civics.
We need it. This is an entryway to the basics.
Get a copy to the cabinet. Anyway, still ahead.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.